folks. My name is Jim Worthen. The show is Worthen One. We're here on Channel 17, Cox Cable on the south coast of Santa Barbara County from every weekday at 2 o'clock, Monday through Friday, and then at 7 o'clock on Friday. We're also going out on TVSB's website and on Vimeo, I think. Anyway, search Worthen One. There's many ways to see it. I say that, and I've mentioned it before, because my guests and I discuss things that aren't site-specific to the south coast of Santa Barbara. They may be as much interest to somebody in Chicago. And we have, back when we took calls, we just had people calling one time from Philadelphia because her daughter was on the show with me, and we quit doing that because you either would have very sparse calls and had to do fill-in, or you would have too many calls and have to cut your show. So, you guys all know me. I'm a narcissist. It's all about me. We can't cut things that I'm in out. Seriously, I tell my guests, and it's usually true, that if I talk more than 10%, it's going to be a bad show. Now, there are some guests that I, like today, that I sort of have to carry them because they have a hard time formulating what they want to say.
Having fun, Jim?
Scott Wenz. Cars are basic, among other things.
Among other things, yes.
We usually, the format usually is where were you born and your history and everything, but we're going to focus today really on what I call urban planning. And the title of the show was Closing Main Street. And we have several examples of that.
We do.
In Santa Barbara County. So let's start with State Street.
Oh yeah. State Street, also known by the locals as Death Valley.
Yeah, I remember the first time I came to Santa Barbara, I got off at Mission Street, and then I realized I wanted to go down State Street, and I can remember going down State Street, seeing the Spanish-style buildings, the Pueblo Viejo, and all the way out to Stearns Wharf you could see.
Beautiful view.
Yeah, just wonderful. Can't see it today for a variety of reasons, but you can't drive that far down State Street. So explain State Street. Why did it close? Why is it closed? What happened to our 7 parades? Go ahead, it's all you.
Well, I'll tell you, part of what happened with State Street started 45 years ago. And this had to do when Dave Davis was the community development director. He sold the city council and the mayor at that time on a plan that was promoted by MIG. MIG is a land use planner and urban planner.
Not the Russian jets.
No,
okay.
Out of San Francisco. And the problem with the planning is that when it first goes in, we're going to narrow the street and we're going to widen the sidewalks, it's going to be so pretty and everybody's going to want to come down. The problem with that is that it is a bad plan that eventually kills the retail businesses. And then you go from retail businesses to restaurants and bars, and then the restaurants and bars can only handle so many, and then you go to the foo-foo t-shirt shops that are not the high-end touristy type things that we used to have.
And not high taxes either.
Right, right.
I love Bend, Oregon. My family lived there when my sister was born. She was 16 years older than I. And we visited, my daughter and I. And to me, Bend, Oregon is the great example of what a main street should be. Wait, it was that way. When I came to Santa Barbara, there were reasonable sidewalks. There was
4 lanes.
Diagonal parking and 4 lanes. So you could come down State Street and you could say, oh, there's a hardware store, and you could find the next parking place. There was off-street parking, and we enhanced that. But as we enhanced off-street parking, and charge for it, they took away all that.
Well, I'd like to step in there. The off-street parking was generally owned by the property owners, and then like they would have validated parking. So the game was you go in, you take a ticket, and then you have to go into one of the shops in that block to get validated, and that would then generate shoppers in that block.
Boy.
And so what happened is that the city decided, this is a wonderful plan, and they expropriated the property.
Yeah, you're younger than I am. I don't remember. You're talking about pieces of paper, tickets? Yeah. And I just remember being able to go behind the
And you
stores.
go in and stamp, and you got so much time for stamps, and then you go to another store. And the game was you went into the stores, but at the same time, oh, well, there's something I just might buy.
Well, when I moved here, my girlfriend had been sent to Westmont to get her away from me, and both sets of parents agreed. And I brought her here, and 6 weeks later I moved here, and that was we came here on Washington's birthday, and so 6 weeks later I was here, and in August we were married, and everybody was happy. I remember the diagonal parking. I got a job at Leeds Shoe Store because I'd started at Leeds Shoe Store in Hayward, California, and, at 14, I think. And so I remember women would pull up, park in that same block, come in, buy shoes, and can we carry those to your car, ma'am? And we could carry, you know, it was both a service community and a way of communicating.
Sure.
You know, and knowing each other.
Oh, and don't forget Ralph Runkles.
Yeah. That was the first thing they took away, I think. On-street parking. And then, I don't know where, I guess some urban planner who loved to put trees in your way decided that they needed one lane on each side for a walk, but that walk really was broken up by trees and landscaping. You know, just what everybody needed to do in a beautiful community like ours. Let's go downtown and look at the trees. Yeah. You know.
A very good friend of mine was one of the top land use planners on the entire west coast of the United States. Arthur Sherman Kitnick, great guy, Purple Heart veteran, Korea, and
say the name again.
Arthur Sherman Kitnick.
Kitnick.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Arthur is no longer around, but he knew what he was talking about. And the first thing he and I did, and I had bought into this plan. You know, look at the pretty trees, right? And we're driving down by the 1200 block, and he's looking around. He says, "What's going on here, Scott?" And I explained to him the concept, and he says, "Oh no, they've got to stop this right now." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Every place that they've done this, within 10 to 15 years, the retail starts to die." And he was absolutely right. And that's exactly what happened to downtown Santa Barbara. In the 12, 11, and 1000 block of State Street, all the retail stores in that area within 10 years were starting to die off. The city made a promise at that time. That promise was that if it doesn't help the retail businesses, we will retrofit. Now there's a promise that the city of Santa Barbara has reneged on, that they would retrofit State Street back to what it was with the 4 lanes. They never did do it.
Yeah, it's all these, I almost want to call them communists, but that isn't fair to the Communist Party. Urban planners, remember? Mm-hmm. Besides that, they decided to take away signs. They had a very tight sign ordinance. Oh. So you no longer could drive down State Street and then turn to find a parking lot by seeing where the store was you were going to. And just completely anti-human.
Well, the city of Santa Barbara had people, the well-meaning people, and I've known a number of them, okay? And some of them were natives. And they were well-meaning. We don't want the garish signs of Hollywood and the LA district, and we don't want this. We want to have a more genteel city. Well, they got so out of hand that the bakery that is now Renault's down in Loretto Plaza, okay, had a sign up that could be seen from the street. Not garish, and it wasn't standing out. It was just, if you look down at the window, you could see bakery. They came in and fined him and told him that he had to take the sign out of his window. This was well over 200 feet from the curb. 200 feet into a private property, and they said you can't have that sign.
Well, I sold a bar, I think it was called the San Andreas Fault, on San Andreas Street, just a few doors south of Mitchell, Torrena. And the man who bought it wanted to paint the facade in the same Adobe paint. And so and the sign for it was painted in lettering on the building.
Okay.
And so he painted it, and then the sign guy said, well, I have to get a permit. And it took 1.5 years to get a permit to put the same sign back on. Now, my guy was pissy and he fought him.
Right.
But, it's, I guess, Ron Reagan said,
yes,
the worst words you'll ever hear is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you.
Exactly.
And I think in the years of the bureaucrat, you have to say, will you please help me? Because they're in control.
Well, we're talking about State Street and how it got shut down.
Yeah.
One of the biggest promotions on State Street by the Bicycle Coalition, now called MOVE, is we are going to put more bike paths on the streets, and there'll be bike paths on State Street now that we don't have parking, and you will see more people downtown. Well, guess what? The highest number of bicycles in the city of Santa Barbara was in 1980. There wasn't a single bicycle path, not one, not down by the beach, nowhere in the city of Santa Barbara was there a bike path. By 1990, it had dropped by almost 30%. By the time it reached 2013, which is the last count that the Bicycle Coalition and the city of Santa Barbara made, was below the baseline number of 1975. So they had put in all these paths. They spent $25 million, at that time it was $25 million. Screwed up the streets, made it difficult for people to get around easily, and said, see, we are doing this for the community and for the environment. The problem is the community and the environment had said, we don't want to have anything to do with it, and we're not going to ride our bikes. Cars Are Basic was given a insider email that was sent out by Ralph Fertig. He was the head of the Bicycle Coalition at the time. And Ralph said, if you don't get people out riding bicycles, you're going to be sitting in a parking lot watching the cars go by. And he was absolutely right. They had failed. And they have failed to this day.
Well,
they're rookies when it comes to success.
Well, and there's, I've always said there's 3 corollaries to bicycle riding. There's school children. Well, parents don't let their kids ride to school on a bicycle much anymore.
Right.
There's alcoholics and new citizens who can't afford a car.
Right.
And they would ride their bikes. Well, now there's Uber, and every
and
new
Lyft,
people coming to this country can buy a car right away.
Yeah.
And so there's less and less bicycle riding, except for health purposes.
And there's less of that, and one of the reasons there's less of that, it's because of the e-bikes.
Oh.
If you have an electric powered bike, you're not getting the exercise that you would getting with a pedal-powered bike. Now, I'm an exercise physiologist. Until my legs went bad on me, I was riding 50 to 70 miles a week. Not a month, but a week. And it was interesting to see these people make, well, this is about health, okay? How many people are now riding their bikes? Well, what was the demographic change in all of California at that time? The baby boomers got married. The baby boomers had kids. The baby boomers had jobs. They didn't have the time to ride to work. They didn't have time to pile the kids on the back end of a bike and get them to where they were going. So that all contributed to the shutting down of the streets, and State Street, the main street of Santa Barbara, was the economic engine. And you know, it's gone.
Just a slight comment on bicycles. The DMV test today is the same as it was 50 years ago for bicyclists. They have a right-of-way on the road. They're to watch out for cars. They have their signals.
Right.
Ow, my stop signal. And drivers see a bike path and they think, that guy can't be going down the street, even though he's going 20 miles an hour. He's got to get over. And they don't give the rights to bicyclists, and many bicyclists ignore I hate it on a one-way street that has a bicycle path when a bicyclist is coming at me on that one-way street.
It's an arrogance.
And they'll, because of parked cars and driveways, they'll come out into my lane.
Right.
And it's so dangerous. Okay, let's go back to closing streets. We talked about narrowing State Street, doing away with parking on State Street,
right,
and landscaping the walks. That pretty much held until COVID.
Right.
And then COVID gave an excuse to
shut down the street.
yeah,
Yes.
And it was an excuse.
Yes, it was.
Although there were some probably government employees who failed their IQ test who were in their car alone with masks on.
You mean like the former city manager, the former head of alternative transportation?
I didn't know that.
Let me tell you, Cars Are Basic went to the city administration's office and we said, okay, you just spent 6 months shutting down State Street. Now you are not allowed by the health regulations to mingle. Even if you have a mask on, you can't be around
6 feet.
6 feet distance and so forth. So what good has that done? And how much has it cost? The city manager and Rob Dayton, who was the alternative transportation guy who came up with this plan, turned around and said, we can't determine the cost. Now wait a minute, you just moved a bunch of plants in, you had so many man hours, you have a log of these man hours, you put in certain barriers, you can't tell us within, say, 10 or 15%?
Well,
And it was a lie. They wanted the street shut down, and you had a bunch of people that said, we don't like cars. It wasn't about making State Street successful. It was about getting rid of automobiles.
well, the whole COVID charade, and for those who were very ill from COVID, those who had loved ones die, that was maybe 5% of the people who had COVID,
Yeah.
because it became a pharmaceutical and medical boondoggle. And if you got knocked off your bike and taken to the emergency room and they gave you a COVID test and a mask, well, you were there because of COVID, because they got hundreds of thousands of dollars, over 100,000 for every patient, even though that person might have only been there and had 5 stitches and was released.
Yeah.
So it was, again, government running amok. Okay, we've got State Street now, and it's still closed
That's right.
for, 6 blocks?
No, it's closed all the way from Stearns Wharf, not to Stearns Wharf, but Haley Street
Yeah.
up to...
Gutierrez.
Okay.
You can turn off Haley onto Gutierrez, onto State, and you can turn off Gutierrez
Right.
onto State.
And then that goes all the way up to Victoria.
Yeah.
And one of the things that CAB said is, look, you have this State Street Advisory Committee that you put together. It is nothing more than a sham. You put nothing but people on it that want to keep the street shut down. So we're coming to you with a plan, and we wrote it out and gave it to the council in a letter saying, because of the amount of money that you want to spend on changing what's left of State Street, why don't you do a scientific study? Take from Victoria.
Oh, facts?
Yes, take from Victoria all the way down to Carrillo Street, return it back to what they were supposed to have, which the city promised the business owners when they started to fail. This goes back many years. The city made a promise. Fulfill that promise, turn the street back to what it was historically, and then tell me in 4 to 5 years, because you can do the rest of your stuff on State Street, whether or not these businesses are now successful. And they will not even respond to the proposal.
So State Street, then they closed Victoria coming across.
It's back open by now.
Yeah, they're beginning to open some. They've closed permanently part of Solis Street.
Because of the barricades, yeah.
Yeah.
And those barricades were to stimulate bicycle traffic, yet we've gone over and done an analysis, done counts, and there aren't any more bicyclists now than before they had the barriers in the street, which means that the Bicycle Coalition and the anti-car statements that we have demand on the streets for east-west travel by bicyclists never was there. It was nothing more than a propaganda ploy.
Well, and now on the east side, they, just off of Milpas, they decided for some reason to 1 block off to put barricades so there's no
That's right.
left turn to get back to Milpas.
That's right.
And
Again, this is part of the issue of trying to get bikes.
And the thing that's delightful in it is that I get to it and it's slow enough, I just turn left over it. And I told a friend who lives in the neighborhood, Tony Browning, he says, oh, the police cars and fire trucks do that all the time. They're not going to back up.
Yeah.
And and then on the other end of Solis Street, they blocked it off.
Yeah.
You can't get from Sola to Castile.
You can't get on Sola Street to Santa Barbara. You can't get to Castillo Street. They have spent close to $1 million just on Sola. And I asked the mayor and another council member, now that it's not working, where are you going to get the money to return the street back to what was working? And what the Historic Landmarks Committee said, do not do. See, the city council is still operating under emergency declaration that cuts the Historic Landmarks Committee off. The Historic HLC has the final say-so in downtown Old Town. And the city council says, we don't care. We have an emergency ordinance, and we're not going to let you get back to where you were.
Well, so we have the impact on Solis Street, over on Ortega off of Milpas, and State Street, that they really can't give us a factual reason for those streets being impacted and closed off. In fact, facts bear against it. The first thing and we suffered for a couple of years, there's only 4 buildings, maybe 6 up to 3 stories, 4 buildings over 3 stories on State Street.
Right.
But a hook and ladder truck with a ladder couldn't fight a fire off of State Street because they couldn't. First of all, they couldn't go up, and then after it was open to them, it was narrowed by the parklets and everything.
That's right.
And in the good old days, the fire trucks would have driven over those damn parklets to fight a fire, but they can't do that anymore.
It is astonishing for long-term people that have lived here and have seen what Santa Barbara used to be. Now, I have a very good friend, and she came into Santa Barbara 37, 40 years ago. She loved Santa Barbara. Well, she left town, is now back on an almost permanent basis. She comes back into town, and she said, I don't see anything in Santa Barbara that makes me want to recommend it to people. As a matter of fact, she's telling people, don't bother to come. Santa Barbara of 30 years ago is no longer.
So there's a petition. People need to bombard the council, and even more than that, the city manager, because that's where the power is, and the city attorney with letters and threats to open up State Street. And that works because all of a sudden State Street north of Anapamu is being opened because people wanted to go to the symphony and they couldn't get their wheelchairs to be, and older people who love the symphony and other performances couldn't walk the 4 or 5 blocks to get to the front of the Granada.
One of CAB's board members, and has been for over a decade now, is a Democrat, and he loves the opera and he loves the symphony and so forth, and he was angrier than you know what at the city for shutting down State Street in front of the Granada. And he says, yeah, it's better now, but he said they need to open up both sides of State Street because it's not enough. If you want to have people come down and enjoy it, they're going to have to be able to drive into that area.
If people just would think of their own driving history, people say, well, there was never a lot of parking near the Granada. That wasn't the point. You would bring everybody except the driver would come into that block, let the passengers out, and go find a parking place and walk the 3 or 4 blocks.
Now you have to understand, because, well, you came into town, you know this. There was a lot of parking on the 1200 block. But when they narrowed the street down by putting in the widened sidewalks, they took that parking away. So yeah, people with short-term memory go, well, that's never been parking and so forth. No, folks, there's plenty of parking. And I had a individual come at me the other day and say, well, State Street in 4 lanes, it wasn't that attractive. Look at all the trees. And I go, why not? And he says, well, it's so much prettier. And I said, did you ever think that the retail businesses and the Chamber of Commerce and other people decorated State Street in the stores for the seasons?
Yeah.
You had Thanksgiving, you had Christmas, you had Halloween, and all the stores and everything changed, and State Street literally became a change by the seasons.
I want to move away from State Street, but there's one recent, and it's too craziness by government. They're going to build the police palace.
Yes.
It's 65 feet tall, the tallest building in Santa Barbara.
Right.
On the Coda parking lot.
Right.
And it's not needed. There's plenty of buildings that they could move into,
Okay.
that they could lease or buy, but they put everybody together in the palace. So in doing that, they have to move the farmers market. And so they had the brilliant idea that the Saturday farmers market, they would put in the 3 blocks of Cabrillo. And they got it all planned, and the fire chief came and he said, we've got a fire station there. And if a fire breaks out, what do? Run through all the kiosks and the people.
Right.
And, again, government planning is failed planning.
I wasn't around when the final plans were presented to the fire department, but I heard about it, and I was managing a 4-story building on Carrillo.
Yeah.
And I heard about that. I went, you have to be frigging kidding me. Nobody can be that stupid. Well, yes, you can be that stupid because you're not stupid. This is intentional. It's not accidental. If you do not like automobiles, what's the best way to get rid of an automobile? It's by getting rid of the roads that they drive on, by getting rid of the storage called garages that you keep the automobile in. This is not a mistake. You have a bunch of people that would like to take Santa Barbara back to the 1800s. Heck, forget Santa Barbara. They want to take the entire state of California back to the 1800s.
Let's go to, again, closing Market Street. Come out of downtown, cross Mission Street, go up through beautiful planted divider, get to State and Constance, the beautiful Presbyterian church there that's used for so many concerts and musicals, and drop down into San Roque. And what's the plan? They want to, State Street can get awful busy. And what are they going to do? The 4 lanes at State Street and parking.
As part of the bicycle master plan. Now here's a legality that the city.
What's that? Well, does master plan have to do with cars on State Street?
Well, let me get to that. In 2016, the city of Santa Barbara, under the tutelage of Das Williams and Greg Hart, who did not want to have to be responsible for their mistake, had the city council adopt the bicycle master plan as an advisory document.
Now, they were on the council.
They were on the council. So the council adopted it as an advisory council. Therefore, it was not a plan that under CEQA that the city would then have to be responsible for. But guess what happened? In 2023, in November, the city of Santa Barbara adopted the West Side Capital Improvement Program that included the Mesa, the West Side, the First District on the Lower East Side, and parts of the Riviera. They included in this, their design for this area, the bicycle master plan. Well, they named it specifically the master plan, not the advisory document. It has now become a ordinance and law under the city of Santa Barbara, which means the city of Santa Barbara is now, by CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, forced to create an environmental impact report for every bicycle path in the city of Santa Barbara, and they refused to do it. Oscar Gutierrez, Alejandro Gutierrez, Eric Friedman, Mikey Jordan, and Sneddon have refused to even address it. And we've sent letters to the city. When are you going to do what the law demands? This city and this council is out of control when it comes to streets. And they want to take Outer State Street to 2 lanes and put bike paths.
I was going to go to Outer State Street. They want to take this very heavily traveled artery to 2 lanes.
That's right.
Bike path, take away some parking along it. But wait, at the La Cumbre area, isn't there 4,000 housing units planned? Or being talked about?
No, you're wrong. It's 5,000. Yeah, you missed 1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's at the old Sears location and the Macy's location.
Yeah. Now, and the thing that's really sad about that is this is being forced on every county and every city in the state of California by Sacramento. The Democrats have had control of Sacramento now for 30 years. They have created these demand plans. This is called demand planning by the state of California, and the state of California says, you must do this. Excuse me, I thought we lived in a free society, and this is not a communist nation.
Some jurisdictions are telling the state to go to hell, I think. Huntington Beach. And in Northern California, Napa, I think, just saying,
that's right.
Force us, sue us.
That's right.
We would rather spend hundreds of millions of dollars fighting you than hundreds of millions of dollars screwing our city up.
That's right.
And so it's the backbone of our city leaders that needs the people to talk to and can you imagine 5,000 more rental units at La Cumbre and State Street lowered to 2 lanes? Well, first of all, all the businesses are going to be killed because people will jump on the freeway and go to Goleta.
Well, where do you think all that traffic that's currently on Outer State Street is going to go if they take 2 lanes away? Into the neighborhoods. The San Roque neighborhood.
Foothill, yeah.
Let me tell you, when the people recognize what's going to happen to their neighborhoods, it's bad enough 1 street off of each side of State Street now, like on Calle Noguera and so forth. It gets just jammed up.
When they're slowing on the highway and blockage on State Street, I frequently, from where I live out on Patterson, drive Cathedral Oaks all the way down to Alomar on Foothill. Boy, that gets jammed up.
That's right.
With people going each way depending on where the blockage is, because cars and citizens are like water. They find the area of least resistance.
It's called fluid dynamics.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Let's. Is there any way to fight this?
Sure there is. There's plenty of way to fight. But the statement that you hear quite often is you can't fight City Hall. And you have a political machine in town that the majority of the people that are well off belong to. If you want to go to a social event, if you want to be accepted by the social elite in this group, you're going to keep your mouth shut.
That's why I don't get invited to those things.
Well, let me tell you, there was a former CAB board member who was forced to drop off the CAB board because his wife came up and said, "We are not being invited to this social event in Montecito. We're not being invited to this social event in Hope Ranch because of this."
Our producer Mike Nicholson pointed out that about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, some city council had this crazy idea of paying an artist because of climate change to paint a blue line on how high up the Pacific Ocean would come. He did. People don't realize that much of Lower Santa Barbara was an inland harbor that filled in over hundreds of years by mud. And so his line came up around De La Guerra and Anapamu Street to Milpas and the Bowl. And people saw that, and a slate of moderate business people, conservative business people ran, and all of a sudden we had 3 new city council members because the people said, the guys that did this, and I think Doss Williams was there at the time, they're crazy as hell. You know, what are they saying? That just the threat is going to ruin my chance to get a mortgage.
Well, let me give you an example. And I'm picking on her, but I'm not picking on her. Kathy Murillo replaced Michael Self on the council that then changed the swing vote. Okay, so the majority was now for the anti-car crowd. And the very first thing that came before that council was the bulb-out plan for Figueroa and Delavina Street. And the city engineer at the time sat before the council and said, this is the plan that you want, but I have to tell you, the quote-unquote accidents that you're trying to prevent will not be prevented by this particular location because the bulb-outs do not affect it. She didn't care. And the council majority did not care. Helene Schneider did not care. Okay? And they put the bulb out in there anyway. Now, this was over the objection of a council resolution that stated no more bulb outs on primary artery streets in the city of Santa Barbara.
Now, they've either destroyed or are going to cause the destruction of Main Street from La Cumbre Plaza to Stearns Wharf.
Yeah, they're 90% of the way on it.
And yet at the same time, they're succumbing to the state's demand for the city of Santa Barbara having 4,000 new rental units.
Right.
So again, it may be that you have to be Huntington Beach and say, screw you, sue us. It doesn't make sense for our city.
Who controls Sacramento? What party?
Well, left of the Democratic Party.
Well, okay, let's call it the Democrat Party, okay? So you have the Democrats in control in Sacramento. They are pushing this all onto the counties and the cities throughout the state of California. Who controls the city council of Santa Barbara? What party?
Oh, they're all Democrats except
That's
one.
right. That's right. Who controls the...
But we got an election coming up. Go ahead.
Who controls the city council of Goleta? It's 100% Democrat.
Yeah.
Who controls the city council of Carpinteria? Except for one, it's all Democrat.
Right.
These people will not turn around and say, look, we may be Democrats, we like certain social values and so forth, but you're killing our communities. They don't have the backbone necessary to turn around and say, this isn't going to happen here. Now, a CAB board member pointed out the fact that just in the county, the RENA demand is 5,000 housing units. He said if you take 5,000 cars and you put them end to end, you would not have enough space to go over San Marcos Pass. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to have that many in the city of Santa Barbara, and you're going to have another, 1,000 some units in the city of Carpinteria or just outside it. Then you're going to have more housing units in Goleta. Goleta was formed to stop density. Yet the people that are there now will not fight Sacramento over the density issue.
Let's go to Goleta. Wonderful old town with great market, Mexican restaurants, other restaurants, and
Santa Cruz Market.
Yeah, great Santa Cruz Market. Yeah. I think you've told me there's a plan to take the 4 lanes and the parking and reconfigure it, killing Main Street again.
It's no longer a plan. It's a design that was voted on by the City Council of Goleta.
So what are they going to do?
They're going to take 2 lanes off of the #1 primary artery in all of Goleta that handles commercial traffic. They're going to take it to 2 lanes.
Hollister.
That's right. They're then going to...
Some people think it's on the north side of the freeway, but it doesn't go through. It dead ends at Fairview, basically.
Pretty much.
And at Patterson, basically.
Yeah. And so when 101 gets shut down, where do most of the heavy traffic go? It goes over onto Old Town Hollister. Now here's the other thing about Goleta that it never has made sense to me. Old Town Goleta is the last cohesive blue-collar district in all of South County. Goleta, Santa Barbara, Carpinteria. Goleta is the only place that has a cohesive center where you can find welders, body shop people, paint stores.
Goodwill, everything.
Everything in there. But I mean, it is a blue-collar district. And I've heard people in Goleta saying, well, Goleta, Old Town, it doesn't, it's not the kind of thing that we'd like to see. What would you like to see? Would you like to see a thriving, tax-producing, blue-collar district? Or do you want to see it foo-fooed up like State Street was and see all of these blue-collar areas go out of business? And then you lose the tax revenue. I mean, Goleta's hurting for tax money, and they're getting rid of the very types of businesses.
The left has used the, white people imposing on everyone else. Yeah. It's really not white people. It's elitists, some of which are not white, imposing on everybody, including the average white person.
That's right.
And so they twist and twist facts and
That's right.
act on feelings.
That's right.
And people like you and I are stupid. We want to act on facts,
Well,
whether our feelings go along with it or not.
Most of my feelings on issues of fact went away when I became a research scientist. I was out at UCSB, and I got bit by the research bug. I took my master's. I was getting ready to go into a PhD program, and I learned real fast. You don't produce a paper. You don't pretend to publish. You do not give seminars if you don't have facts to back you up. And if those facts aren't 100% correct, somebody's going to come along and go, oh, by the way, Scott, boom, you missed a point here. I learned that one real fast.
Yeah, I feel sorry for students today, and it may be true, but when I went back to college as a husband with a child, I decided after being a C student my freshman years in junior high, before I got married, that I was going to get good grades. I decided to get good grades, you get the best grade. So professor can't screw with you. You're the top of the 100 people.
Right.
And I used to drive professors crazy if I didn't get an A plus on a paper, or if they showed me missing a question, I'd go in and tell them where they were wrong. And I would tell them where they were wrong in a lecture. Now, I was older, I had more political experience, that I scared professors. And but I think there are students a lot brighter than I, better prepared, who could be doing the same thing,
Yeah.
but they have been sold on this idea it's going to affect your grade.
Well, one of the things you don't have in colleges now is you don't have a post-military background. You don't have a post-draft individual. I volunteered for the draft when I was 25. I was an unusual duck. I had 2 degrees. So when I got out of the Army, I had to deal with all that stuff.
Yeah, but you wanted to go shoot goose.
When I got out of the Army, and I had to deal with a bunch of stuff. And the Army there's your way, there's that way, and there's the Army way. Okay? And when you stand up in a class, or you raise your hand in a class, and the professor looks at you and going, wait a minute, he looks like he's in his 30s.
Yeah.
What is he doing here? And then you start quoting things to them. It changes a lot of attitudes. Well, you don't have that anymore. You have a bunch of professors who say, we know what's going on here, and you're just nothing more than an 18 or 19-year-old snot. Okay? And we're going to tell you what to do. Well, that's exactly what they did to downtown Santa Barbara that eventually killed it. We're going to tell you what to do.
So the plan is to destroy Main Street in
every single city you can find.
So far, State Street in Santa Barbara, which goes miles, 4 or 5 miles, and now almost a mile in
Old Town.
In Old Town,
Goleta.
Goleta.
Right.
I've heard that the way it's happening in Lompoc is Lompoc has been, road maintenance has had to be on the back burner. I mean, they do there's not deep holes in the roads, but potholes are there, and because law enforcement, fire comes first. And in a limited tax base, that's you have to get down to public works, and then maintenance of public works is down the line. I hear that they are going to kill, I guess it's H Street from Ocean all the way to Vandenberg Village, almost all the way to the bridge anyway.
Well, yeah, not quite that. What happened is that Caltrans District 5 was following the dictates of Sacramento, which was to kill streets. One of the ways you want to kill streets is by putting in micro roundabouts. They put in the micro roundabout at La Purisma and 246 that under emergency conditions rolled the fire truck and kill the firemen. Okay, the roundabout at 246 and 154 on the other side of Solvang up there by San Ynez has turned out to be a major nightmare. They do not care, and that's the problem. And so what they're doing is in Lompoc, Caltrans came in and said, I'll tell you what we'll do. We will put on our dollar a improvement coming off of one. Street. Okay, but here's the deal. You have to sign an agreement that allows us to do anything we want to this stretch of street at any time.
So Caltrans is going to plan the major street through Lompoc.
They're going to narrow it. This is part of a District 5 plan. This goes back to Sacramento, and people that are on the Democrat side of the party don't want to hear that. I mean, look, how many elected officials on a daily basis get in their car and travel to their job as an elected official and travel to a location to look at something else? They're using automobiles all the time. But that's not good enough for people like you and me, because we're the private sector and we don't need to have that access. So that's what's happening in Lompoc. Well, guess what just happened up in Santa Maria? They put in a high-density housing project. Does that sound something like what they want to do in South County and Santa Barbara City? And they're putting this in, and they're putting in a couple hundred units. They're putting in 75 some parking spots for that couple hundred units. They said, not a problem. We have this public parking structure over here.
The shopping center
and
right
we
next
have the
to
shopping center, and these people can come over and use that, and we'll give them special parking. Here's the problem. That shopping center and that area is starting to come back before the influx of the new people.
Oh yeah, they're going to have new customers.
They're having new customers come in. It's slowly building back up. And guess what? When those people want to shop at holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, you name it, those parking places will be filled with shoppers, and the people that are using the housing that we're told you can park there won't have any parking.
Well, in most areas, the problem of parking is reduced to how far you can walk.
Yeah.
You can park your car 3 blocks away. Well, that's good for healthy people, but it's, again, like going to the theater. Older people,
That's right.
disabled people
Right.
have to be allowed to get off right at their place.
That's right.
At where they're going. And so, but again, in all of this, and we're rolling down in our time, in all of this, it seems to me that the planners, the bureaucrats, are not only oblivious to human nature, they're almost hateful of the human being. Nobody could hear that. Almost hateful of the human being.
Well, and this goes back, and we don't have time to get into the Luddites. The Luddites were a socialist commune type of organization, back to nature and all the rest of the stuff. The Luddites were very successful for the first 10 years. Then all of a sudden, human nature took over, and the Luddite commune failed. Well, this is exactly what keeps happening in California and other locations. Well, we have this better idea, and we know how to do it. This time we have history behind us, and we will do it better. Well, tell downtown New York that's starting to crumble. Tell places like Baltimore that had to redo the entire Battery Park area because it became a crumbling area.
Well, I'm not a Democrat, and I mean in the small d.
Right.
We're not a democracy, we're a
republic.
We're a
Right.
representative government everywhere in our society. But a new democratic tool is available to us. How effective is emailing, old, not letter writing like we used to, but just bombarding your representatives and bureaucrats with emails?
It's not very effective. And the reason it's not effective is because they can just hit delete, 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 delete. And unless you have some way of documenting what you've done, then, and we had a tag that you can put on an email saying, has it been received? Okay? They have now a new software tool that gets around that so they don't have to do that.
Well, you're making me feel desperate, and I do own a pitchfork, and I do know how to make a torch. Do we have to march right into their meetings and demand?
Pretty close, and it never used to be that way. But as the society becomes more technological, and people are more and more involved with what's going on in their four corners of their house, and they're not paying attention. I talked with a banker the other day about what was going on in Buellton. He had no idea about the bike paths and the other problems that the Buellton City Council is faced with, and is going to go against what he wants. He said, I didn't know that. I said, how could you? I mean, you're not being invited into the Buellton Council. They're not sending out notices to you saying this is what we're going to do. They're not asking for your input. They're not saying, oh, and by the way, and I love this for all elected officials, if you can't prove it's going to work, then you should be willing to put up a bond to take out what you've screwed up.
Or at the very least, sunsetting every action you take. This is for a year, and it will take 3/4 vote to reinstate it, and
but you see, that's an action having to do with sociology. What I'm talking about, bulb outs and other things. Who's going to take the $1 million to take them out? So I mean, it's becoming very, very
depressing.
Yes.
Very depressing. Well, we have to fight on.
Yep.
Maybe we have to think of ourselves as in the United States in 1774, or in various elections that we've had.
Yeah.
We did elect Ron Reagan governor of California.
And everybody loved the outcome of it, so why did it change?
And it can happen again.
Yeah.
We've got an election coming up, and a very bright man who they think is mercurial and angry, and just today said this will be decided November 5th. And that's not just at the presidency, that's across